everyone. Welcome again to another edition of the Focus program. Stay focused. I am your host, Pastor D.W. Tolbert. I'm pastor of the New Hope Baptist Church here in the city of Muskegon, Michigan, USA. We thank you for once again joining us for another taping of our show. And we're here. We're delighted to be in your on your televisions, in your homes, and everything to share with you a great show today. We have a wonderful guest that's with us today to share some things about the tax season. Yes, it's that dreaded time of the year once again. But it's not dreaded for everybody, of course. Some people are looking forward to this because, they may have a refund coming. So it varies. But we have here with us once again, Mr. Willis Clark, who is the manager of the H&R Block Tax Preparation Office here in Muskegon. And he was here with us before, and he's here to share with us again what's trending, what's new, and what's going on in the world of taxes. And as we all know from what's been going on with our government leaders the last few weeks of last year, there have been some changes. So this is a good opportunity for you to listen up and find out a little bit about what's going on. Welcome again, Mr. Clark. Thank you for coming and taking time to be with us today. We certainly want to thank you for being with us and everything. I know you're busy, and thank you for taking time out of your schedule.
Not a problem.
So tell us, let's start by just talking about what's going on, what's new, and what's trending in this tax season. Give us an overview of that.
So much that has changed.
Yeah.
But the main thing really is just tax reform. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people are really looking at things like, when am I getting my refund? Things that have gone on with the government for the new tax reform, which is called the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which has really shaken things up as far as how we look at a tax return.
Okay.
But the number one thing right now that is really affecting folks is going to be when they receive their refunds.
Oh, okay.
As of beginning of last tax season, we started a new thing called the PATH Act, which is protection against tax hikes. It was a law that was put in by the last president that we had, and pretty much just kind of delays refunds a little bit for anybody who has refunds coming back that are due to either earned income credit or the additional child tax credit. So with those this year, it's going to be a little later than the last year. So they're estimating February 27th will be the first day this month that they can get it this year.
Okay.
So things are very different. The other thing really is with this new tax reform is just the fact that things are really different. The main thing, it may affect a lot of people in what they are seeing to be a positive way. More money in their pocket during tax season. As far as like the way that they structure what tax bracket that you fall into.
Okay.
They've been relaxed, so people are going to end up seeing more money in their paychecks because less tax is taken out. Okay. And then they're also going to see more money in their refunds because things have been increased, some things have been removed, but have been modified in a way that so far it appears to be more beneficial to most of our taxpayers that we see from year to year.
Okay.
So far, so good.
So the people who are primarily impacted by these refund delays are people who are receiving the earned income credit and what other credit was that you mentioned?
The additional child tax credit.
Okay.
So that's one of the things that has kind of doubled. And I say kind of doubled because it has a maximum for the current year of $1,000, but for next year it will have a maximum of $2,000. However, 600 of it is meant to just reduce your tax. So if it turns out that you have no taxable income, you'll only be entitled to receive 1,400 of it as a refundable credit, which just means you can get a refund even if you aren't required to file that as far as the federal goes.
Okay. So it's wise to at least go and see if you need to file, because you may have a refund coming back, even though
Definitely.
you didn't. You may fall in some kind of category that says you
Right.
don't have to file.
Right, and as I have stated the last time that I was here, it's really important that every 3 years, taxpayers, if you can do your return yourself, that's great. Like, we're happy to hear that. But there's a lot of things that get missed, and some things are well known, some things are not so well known. And the tax laws change every year.
Yeah.
Sometimes in large extent, like this year. Other times not quite as significant. But really, every 3 years, bring your taxes in, have them looked at by a tax professional. We offer a free service that is, we call a second look, where it's literally like we're just going through and doing the tax return from scratch. So we see what we come up with versus what has already been found. We can only do it on a return that's already been filed with the IRS.
Okay.
But pretty much we're just taking a second look to make sure it was done right. The nice thing is, if it's done right, then you didn't pay anything extra, and then you have our stamp of approval that says it's correct. If it's not done right, then we show you how to correct it. So the only thing we really charge for is if we have to fix it, we charge for the amendment.
Okay.
But the overall just viewing of it, making sure it was done correct, there's no added fees for that.
Okay. And maybe that's something people don't know, too, that you can file an amended return if there are some errors or maybe something that you did miss that could be to your benefit. You can file an amended return, right? And have that sent in.
This, like, April 17th of this year is the deadline for taxes. It's a dual deadline, though, because it's the deadline this year for anybody who owes extra taxes, like they didn't have enough withholding for the year. If they have a balance due, it's due by the 17th of this year.
Okay.
It's also the deadline for anybody from 2014, because we're filing 17 right now, but the IRS gives you those 3 years. So 16, 15, and 14 are still able to be filed, and if there's a refund coming, you can still get that. Because if at the end of the year the IRS owes you money, then they're not going to go out of their way to give it to you unless you file for it. So as of April 17th of this year is the last chance that you have to get any kind of a refund due to you over and above what you may have already received for the 2014, at least for the federal. Michigan actually gives you an extra year, so we could still do 2013 for the Michigan refund. So
beyond 13, like 12 or 11, that's just a closed case.
Correct. Yeah, so it's what we would call basically a dead year for your refund. You might have had a refund that you just
not anymore.
Filed for, but the IRS...
Now you got a donation, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Donation to the government. That's exactly right.
But if you owe for those years, they still can come for you, right?
Oh,
is that correct?
Most definitely. With interest.
There's something
and
not
penalties.
fair about that.
Agreed. If you owe them money, they will be quick to get it. But if they owe you, they will only give it to you if you ask. And you ask by filing a tax return.
Yeah, up to 13. Is that something new? Has that always been?
That's always been the case. It's just that kind of stuff's not well known.
I see.
So people are always like, well, I've got until the end of this year to file this year's. If I don't file it, I'm in trouble. I can't get it after that. So that's a common thing that we have people talk to us about.
Well, what's one of the most commonly overlooked tax breaks that people probably just don't know about?
Well, I already mentioned it earlier. Earned income credit, which, according to what we have coming from the IRS, it was only claimed maybe 1 out of 5 times by people who would have otherwise been eligible.
Is that right?
And with eligibility, as I said, it's a refundable credit. So even if you're not required to file, you may still be eligible for that portion of a refund. But it could be somebody with kids, it could be somebody without kids, as long as they're of age 25 or older. It's all just really based on earned wages. So if you have a job, you might be entitled to it. Now, one misconception is unemployment, which technically is unearned because it's paid out by the unemployment insurance agency, so therefore it's not considered earned wages. But any kind of wages that you got from a job working, you may or may not be entitled to it. So really the only way to find out is to come in and give it a look.
Now, is the reason why a lot of people are overlooking that is because they're doing their own taxes, or that's the reason?
Yeah,
okay.
Doing their own taxes, or just assuming that because of the fact that it comes down to saying that they don't owe any tax, that they just decide that they don't have to file. And like I said, it could very well be that it might just be $200, $300, or $400 for somebody with no kids. A married couple with 3 kids could get upwards of $6,000 for that credit.
Oh, really?
So, I mean, it varies based off your income and however many kids you might be claiming on the return, if any.
Okay. Wow, that's a good amount of money. Yeah. Now, you know, we heard a lot of hype late last year from Republicans and Democrats alike. The tax reform is bad. Some say it's good. Some say it benefits the rich, and some say it doesn't benefit the poor, and others say it's a corporate windfall. You know, all of that aside, the average taxpayer, is it beneficial to the average taxpayer?
Well, I mean, it still kind of remains to be seen, but from what we have seen right now in our program, we're doing an estimation of what we think next year's would look like if we had the exact same information in. So we give the client a printout of basically what their 2018 would be estimated using the 2017 income, and then implementing all of the changes that have been in there. And on most of the ones that I've seen, they have had a definite increase.
Oh, really?
I think I've only seen 2 that were right around the same amount. I have yet to see any that actually had a negative impact.
Okay.
So far, it looks like it's going to be a better deal for like lower income people. It's definitely a tax break for people that are getting a lot more money, for people that are earning a lot more.
Yeah.
But your average person right now is appearing to be getting a better deal for next year.
Is it? Okay.
You know, now things change every year. So you might be making $25,000 this year. Next year you might make 50. That might put you in a different tax bracket. Might make you no longer eligible for things you were otherwise eligible for in the previous year. So I mean, it ebbs and flows. So I mean, we don't really know from year to year. All we can do is just estimate based off what we currently have, and then say, based on this, it's looking like you would have this much extra coming back. One of the things that is changing that might freak some folks out for a little bit is the fact that exemptions are disappearing. So if you were claiming yourself, your spouse, and 2 kids, you had $4,050 per person on the tax return. So that's $20,000 plus that is coming out that would have not been taxable. In the current bracket, or in the current reform, it will be. But on the other hand, they're increasing the filing status. So a married couple would only be getting $12,700 this year as their filing status credit. Next year, it's going to be $24,000. So while some things are disappearing, some things are either increasing or it's kind of shuffling around a little bit. One of the things that's brand new, it's called a family tax credit. For anybody that's on the tax return that's too old to receive the child tax credit. So technically speaking, if what's on your return puts you in the 10% tax bracket, a $4,000 exemption would only get you $400. So the family tax credit is $500. So just that alone would be a $100 increase. So, I mean, it looks like it's going to be pretty good this year. So, I mean, it remains to be seen, but people have to keep in mind that all those changes are in effect as of 2018. So right now, the stuff that we're filing for 2017
Right.
will not affect them this
Right.
year.
Yeah.
But it's something to look forward to for next year.
So they are, for in the immediate view of things, they are supposed to be getting a little bit more money in paychecks, though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And in fact, they may or may not be getting a new W-4 from their employer because the tax brackets have relaxed and they're taking less out. It's an opportunity for them to see really whether or not it's beneficial to them to keep claiming whatever they've been doing.
Yeah.
If
That
they
was
want
my
to
next
reduce it
question,
or
yeah.
increase it. Because really, all the W-4 is asking you is how many mouths do you really have to feed? So you think of the number on there as how many mouths are in your household. But at the same time, if in that last example, married couple with 2 kids, the form would tell them that you should claim 4. Well, the higher the number, the less taxes they take out. So it's very possible that could have them ending up owing. So, I mean, with any form, I would tell you that the more tax withheld, most likely the better off that you are. So in this instance, I would say even if you do have a couple of kids on the tax return, take a look at it. And moving from, say you're at 4, if you take it down to 3, you're really not going to notice a big difference in your paycheck, but you're going to see it at the end, because if you're working bi-weekly, whatever that change in amounts is, you don't see it so much in one paycheck, but bi-weekly, that's 26 pay periods. So that amount times 26, you'll get it all as a lump sum added in at the end of the year.
Right.
So a lot of times it's more beneficial to do it that way.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if you just can't afford what you got and your bills are just like you're neck and neck with your bills making ends meet, then you may want to increase it by, 1, maybe by 2. But you just got to be really careful.
Yeah.
Some people change it on and off throughout the year. They think they've got a large refund coming from a bonus check for that pay period. So they quick raise their W-4 up so there isn't any tax taken out of it.
Right.
Because they got big dreams for whatever that's going to be.
Yeah.
But then they forget to change their W-4 back to where it was before. So then they've got the tax taken out at the new number that they've increased it to. And at the end of the year, they end up being sorry.
Yeah.
So if you have to pay in, it's not any fun.
No, it's not. It's not. That's why I said that at the beginning, the dreaded time of the year for some, because some people already know, they're going to be owing and everything. But it basically sounds kind of like the proverbial pay me now or pay me later.
Pay me later.
But pay you will, and it's when do you want your pain? You want it a little at a time, or do you want it all in one?
Exactly.
At the end.
I mean, depending on what's on your tax return, if you don't have any kids, for example, you're quite literally looking at your withholding versus whatever your taxes are on your employment. So if you're looking at roughly the same amount every single year, you can really have a guesstimate as to what your refund's going to be. So if you think you want more per paycheck, I mean, you're a little more safe to go ahead and change it 1 or 2. And then you can just decide, really, do you want it now or do you want it later? A lot of people would like it all at once, but I mean, sometimes it just doesn't work out that way.
Right.
So, it's up to the individual, but it is literally a case-by-case basis.
Right.
What works for you may not necessarily work for me, because you're not necessarily making the same amount of money. You might have an extra child on the tax return. Somebody might be in college. I mean, there's a lot of different factors that could change things.
Yeah, and you kind of help people analyze that, don't you? When you're doing their taxes and
Definitely.
They have those kinds of questions.
That's one of the advantages of going to somebody who knows about that as far as like future tax planning. Your refund wasn't very big this year, or maybe you owed this year. Let's see how we can fix that.
Right.
Take a look at this, take a look at that. Give them alternatives for how they want to go about doing stuff for the year. And one of the big things really is just letting them know, hey, there's this or that you might be able to claim you didn't know was even out there. So with Michigan, you have like the property tax credit for regardless of how old you are, but I mean mainly seniors get bypassed with this one. But if you either own or even if you rent and you're paying taxes for the property that you're paying, if you rent, that is your property taxes. If you own, you've got your winter and summer bills. Michigan could possibly give you a credit for that. So that's a refundable amount. So even if you don't necessarily owe any money to the government, as far as the federal, say you are on Social Security and that's all you have. Social Security is not usually taxable in that instance to the federal, so therefore you wouldn't owe the IRS anything. But Michigan wouldn't have that refundable credit, and that's up to $1,200 depending on your situation. So, I mean, it's money that's just sitting there, and Michigan, like I said, they won't give it to you unless you ask for it.
Right.
So it's definitely, that's another thing that gets overlooked too.
Yeah, well, you kind of led into my next question is about some of the things that are trending at the state level.
Yeah.
I don't know how many things have changed, or I don't know if it changed as drastically as at the federal level. But
no.
Can you kind of just briefly fill us in on the trends that are happening in the state level?
It really hasn't changed all that much thus far.
Okay.
But we have heard that they are increasing the exemption amount on the state level for Michigan. So, and that's, I think, set up to be over a couple of years. It's going to go up a little bit each time, and then rest at a new amount. So instead of losing your exemptions like you did for the federal, Michigan went the other direction and just increased it.
Oh, really?
But their tax is way smaller, so there's not as much that you're going to need to reduce your stuff anyways. But just due to that fact that they're giving you a little extra in your money.
Okay. So we're pretty stable there at the state level.
Pretty stable.
Things didn't do too much
so,
change. I thought maybe because of changes in the federal government, it might trigger some things at the state level, just because this change in it, and it knocked some of the potential numbers at the state level out of whack, and maybe those had to be readjusted, etc. But
So
but if it's stable, that's good too.
It's pretty stable.
That's good.
So that's the only thing that's really changing. That's as far as we've heard.
Okay. Good.
So no worries there.
Good. So when a person's getting ready to do their taxes, and I imagine it's getting to be that rush and crunch time in your office.
Oh, yes.
You're
right
getting
now
full.
Busy.
What kind of documents would you suggest that they bring? What would you like to see them have when they walk in?
Well, I mean, anything that comes to you that says important tax related, whether it's W-2s or a 1099 for unemployment, things that you could gather early would be your property taxes paid for your winter and your summer. Do you pay alimony or do you receive alimony? If you have any expenses for like hunting for a new job in the field that you work in, or just any kind of expenses that are unreimbursed as an employee, that unfortunately is going to be something that will not be available in the new tax reform, but it's still available for this year.
Okay.
So pretty much anything that's just tax related, just bring it into us, and we can tell them whether or not it's useful or not.
And if somebody bought a house or sold a house, that would probably be a lot of information they would need to talk to you about too, I imagine.
Buying a house is not such a big deal on tax related. It's when you sell the house. You just got to figure out whether you made any kind of a gain on the sale. But at that point, you just bring us a shoebox, we'll go through it.
Well, good.
Receipts Amundo, we love them. So we play with them, so it's all good.
Yeah, well, that's good. So it's a busy time, and people are trying to get in there, hopefully to get refunds, and rather than to have to pay out again. So that's good.
Right.
That's good. And so you would recommend then that they see a tax professional, given the changes that have gone on, rather than trying to wade through all those issues on their own, and
Definitely.
try to seek some help, because it has changed so tremendously for this tax season.
And I am not only a manager, I am also a tax preparer. So
Okay.
I do taxes as well. So I'm right there in the thick of it with my employees to make sure that we try to see clients as quick as possible. But any tax professional, I would definitely recommend that they see somebody just to make sure that they're not missing anything.
Okay. Yeah, we don't want anybody getting in trouble, huh?
Preferably not, no.
Yes, indeed. So we're getting close to the time to wrap up to our show today. We're almost out of time, but if you would just had maybe a short summary of what you would suggest or recommend to our listeners as far as preparing maybe for 18, the filing 18, which will happen in 19, when all of these mega changes start really kicking in, for sure. If you had any ideas or any suggestions for them to plan for that now.
Well, really just there isn't a whole lot different that I would say. Just pretty much just make sure that you bring as much as you can. And like I said, bring us a shoebox and of whatever documents you have. Half of them may not even be relevant, but let us figure that out for you.
Okay.
Better to know than assume and then find out you missed money you could have otherwise received.
Right. Well, good. Well, thank you again, Mr. Clark. We do appreciate it. Thank you for your time and for coming and sharing with us today on our Focus program. I know that our viewing public certainly appreciates it, and the information that you've shared is certainly beneficial. Again, this is Mr. Willis Clark from the H&R Block office here in Muskegon. He's the manager and a preparer and has much knowledge and experience in this field. And certainly they would love to for you to call them if you have questions that you would like to answer for relative to your tax preparation or anything related to taxes. So thank you again, and God bless you. And we're getting ready to leave, but as we prepare to close and go, we want to remind you, always remember, always and never forget, when you get with Jesus, you're going up. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.